Greetings, everyone. It is our favorite time of the week, Brony Debates time. I hope you're all doing well out there. We've got a heck of a topic tonight. This is another one of Heather's suggestions that she was saving in her back pocket for a rainy day like today. And it's I'm pretty interested in this. So we're talking about Christian media representation. Heather, what exactly was like the wording of the suggestion you had written down for yourself?
I think you have the tweet somewhere, actually, like, pinned.
Was
Let
it
me
in the
go and
tweet?
read it
I
real
don't
quick.
think it was in a tweet.
Oh, actually, it's on my phone. Let me go ahead and dig that up. I told it to you verbally. I meant to put it in a tweet to you, like, the next time you asked.
Mm. Yeah, and
But,
well,
yes.
go for it.
Well, it really, it could branch to all kinds of religion, but my question was religious themes in modern shows. Is Christianity seen in a mostly negative light? And we could expand that to be like, is all religion seen in a mostly negative light?
Well, I know for a fact that that's not true, but I think we're going to end up discussing laws of averages again today, as we tend to do on this show. So to help drive this home and get some good education in here, I brought on the expert, Shady Oak Ministries. How are you doing tonight?
Honored to be considered of that title.
Brawny, real quick, is anyone else hearing his mic being very, like, how do I describe this? Staticky?
Very
DJ,
robo.
can you weigh in here?
Robo Brawny.
Yeah. Something's up with that.
So what are you saying?
You sound like a changeling.
I sound like a changeling.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, let me see. Maybe if I close a program or two. Everything is the way it should be.
Now it sounds
there you go. It sounds better. Much better.
Okay, so yes, it was Adobe Premiere interfering with my audio. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully that didn't put you off. Anyway, and we got DJ. How you doing tonight, DJ?
Doing just perfectly fine, Robo Brawny. I am here to talk religion, I guess.
Alrighty then. And Heather, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty all right. I'm glad to have contributed another good topic to the debates.
Yep, I can always count on you for that. Now, real quick, what made you want to talk about this one?
Well, as you know, I just love cartoons and shows so much, and religion comes up more than once in these shows, like either as like an actual thing in the plot, like we're dealing with religion lore or something, or just like people take concepts from there and implement them in their own stories because there's no such thing as an original idea. We just we reform stuff we already kind of know.
Wait a minute. Are you arguing that maybe My Little Pony might have those biblical themes?
Mayhaps.
We've done a couple of we've done a stream and I've done a video about that kind of thing, and Shady's early work is all about applying the friendship lessons to biblical contexts. Real quick, I'm seeing some new names in the chat. At least as far as I can remember. Taylor Clark, how are you doing? I hope you enjoy the show tonight. And real quick, we're going to shout out everybody who supports the channel financially, including, these, especially the $10 and up tier, which includes my 3 co-hosts tonight, such as Shady Oak, Princess Heather Blossom, and DJ Skywalker. There's also Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Rein-Kun, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Alicia Lynette, Zeta Z, Sniper Nighter, Calbeck, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Willie Eisen, 7 equals 1 Heart, and Dark Malcontent, executive producer of Titan Heart Studios. I would highly encourage you all to check out all of their content. Links in the description. Shady Oak's channel is on there. Is in that list as well as how you can support the channel and what you would get in return. You can also drop a tip in my head on the bottom right there, the little mini-me, if you have a comment that you would like to be read out loud on stream. Anyway, with that being said, Heather, give us some opening thoughts here. How do you feel Christians get represented in media? Oh, Heather, you're muted. Why is
You
Heather
dropped
muted?
some stuff.
Alrighty then.
Anyways, I feel like it's a mixed bag. Certainly, you guys take a few, and I'm saying you guys because, like, most of you guys in here are religious. Religion certainly tends to take a few jabs on the chin, but, like, so do most groups in the content I at least watch, you know, and it's mostly based around comedy. It's not unusual for a character to be easily villainized and use Christianity or their religion in order to just like justify things that they do in media. Like, I believe one example I could think of is like Castlevania. Like, obviously, you think the vampires are the bad guys, but what even like started that conflict was the church burning freaking Dracula's wife alive for no real reason other than you're married to Dracula. Die. She was a really nice doctor, just a regular human lady that he fell in love with. And that just kickstarted the whole plot.
Alrighty then. So, as far as I can tell, Christians get a pretty bad rap in media. More often than not, and it's happened in recent shows too, where the second somebody comes on and they're reading a Bible, you know that guy's going to be a villain of some kind. I especially see it a lot in anime. It's like, let me see, Chrono Trigger. Was it? Yeah, no, it was Chrono Crusade was one that started off, and it was about nuns. But right off the bat, one of the nuns makes a pact with the devil, and one of the major villains in that series is the church. Shoot, the devil is a part timer. Well, the villains of that one is a church, and is the church. That's a parody anime. There's villains in the church are the villains in Seven Deadly Sins, and they're certainly anti-heroes in, like you said, Castlevania. So I see a lot of it there. I feel like there's a lot of games that, like video games that take Christian mythology and sort of turn it on its head. So I don't see a whole lot of positive representation. The only one I can think of really off the top of my head was X-Men, the 90s cartoon, where they accurately portrayed Nightcrawler as a Gregorian monk. It's very religious and you know got Wolverine back into it. That was a pretty good representation of Christianity. Other than that, I can't really think of much off the top of my head. I'm sure there will be more examples as the night goes on. DJ, what do you think?
Overall, I suppose my thesis on this is Christian media representation is bad on both ends. Both
Oh
from
yeah,
those
the stuff that
portraying
Christians
Christian
produce
and those
certainly
that come
have.
from Christians. Yeah.
Yeah, because we got Veggie Tales and Bible Man.
So coming from a Christian household growing up, I'm not overly religious myself, but I do believe a Baptist faith over here, so probably going to be on a little more easygoing than Brawny and Shady, but I'm not going to assume entirely. So I grew up with VeggieTales, definitely, and somewhat of an audio series known as The Adventures in Odyssey, if anyone's ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember going to like the Christian bookstore a lot, and the only thing worth getting in the children's section was VeggieTales. Everything else was either campy or a snore fest. And it's only later when I've watched YouTubers like Saberspark where you see the stuff that is like, oh, you never should have released that.
Indeed.
God,
And
you remember the one he got reanimated?
Oh yeah, no. And then you have the more recent ones, which how this became a series, I don't know. God's Not Dead, where it is stupidly preachy. But then you have other things that get real popular, which I still need to see it, so I don't know if it's good representation or not, and that's good omens.
I think
Interesting.
it's a good show and it probably does it all right, but I don't think Christians like it.
No, we don't.
I tried looking into it, and I couldn't find a whole lot on the Christian thoughts to the series. Other than
The show is
someone
called
trying
Good
to protest
Omens.
Netflix for it, even though it wasn't on Netflix.
The show is
Premise.
I know
called Good.
God's
immediately.
the villain, and the angel and demon, who are the main characters, have to try to prevent the apocalypse so that the senile old man that is God doesn't end up hastening the end of the world before its time or slaying innocent people, which the God of the Bible is not known to do. It's a very disrespectful caricature.
Yeah, leave it to people at Netflix to
Amazon,
bomb.
actually.
Oh,
Hey, they
Amazon
blew
even
Ramona.
worse.
I was about to
Somehow
say, if it
even
was on
worse.
Netflix, I would. If it was on Netflix, I would have watched it by now.
Alrighty then. So Shady, what do you think?
Well, believe it or not, I'm going to take the positive stat in that the Christian representation is actually pretty fair, and this is what I mean. There's two good ways to represent somebody in a positive light. In contrast or neutral representation, we all know, like, for example, Scootaloo's aunts in My Little Pony, they just threw in the gay characters and they didn't change the plot. They didn't necessarily alter anything or preach their lifestyle. They just existed as a representation of 2% of the population. Since Christians make up about a quarter of the planet's population, it's not negative or positive, that's just a consistent narrative. And people who want to immerse themselves in the story will generally run into Christians. You see that. There's also the Bible itself as an example of points made in contrast, the lesser to the greater or the good to the best. The parable of the Good Samaritan is a good example of how Christians being shown in a negative light are showing what a Christian ought not to be. And, of course, that only works if they're in contrast to the character who the Christian ought to be, which Jesus himself used as the most marginalized and hated of the communities. That was the Good Samaritan, a cultural exile and religious sellout. So if you can understand the point that would be made through a literary perspective, it would focus on that point, that the idea of what a Christian ought to be is Christ, and this one isn't doing it. That can be a valid representation if it's calling you to live at a higher level than just calling yourself by a name. However, there are cons. You see caricatures, like I mentioned before. Parks and Recreation, I think, is the best example because whenever they showed up, they were just the impediment to progress and hypocrites galore. But unlike a contrast, what makes that lazy writing is it only allows the absolute worst of any group to exist for no other purpose than to showcase them, which is not only inaccurate, but the negative form of representation leaves the audience with a narrative that's the only kind of person this worldview has to offer. And another is scapegoats, which I'm sure you understand. Christians in modern media, for the most part, like neutral representation, do exist, but unlike neutral representation, they go out of their way to manipulate an audience into coming to conclusions about a group that's not only lying about what the group claims, but also influencing the atmosphere that will accompany their place in society. Now, I understand that the negative or positive stories that are going to be told rarely require us to understand a character's view of metaphysics and metaethics in order to understand who they are as people. But for better or worse, whenever you bring up a religious worldview, it gives a length of depth that, like Heather said, is not going to be easily put forward unless you associate with all of their behavior. I can note the biblical themes, but most of the average listener isn't going to understand fundamental theology and not going to understand the difference between this is what they do, not what they teach. You'll just assume the same. Likewise, I understand no writer is obligated to give a full theological overview of every side character they portray in their stories, but a character can serve a positive or negative purpose for the sake of the story in order to just simply progress the plot. It would be just as whiny if another group complained when they're mentioned in any other way than glowing. My point is, I think that the representation is fair because when it comes as a trend across all forms of entertainment, outside of those produced by their own, i.e. Christians, then you're giving people an opportunity to say, this is what you say, but look at what you do. You ought to be more like Christ, which is the core claim of Christianity.
Heather, what do you think about that?
About his view in particular, think it's pretty reasonable. In my I feel like I think I said earlier, I feel like it's a mixed bag what you get with religious representation in media, because there's a lot of cynical atheists in Hollywood, so you see it all the time where it's mostly just made fun of, from South Park to Rick and Morty. But I would argue that a lot of writers will be maybe non-religious, but they get why you're religious and can respect it. A good piece of media, I think, kind of taking both angles, was actually The Hunchback of Notre Dame, because you did have Judge Frollo, who was an example of a person using their religious righteousness as a way to justify their horrid actions. But you also had the Archdeacon, who was the one who really saved Quasimodo's life at the beginning of the movie, because he confronted Judge Frollo about the atrocities he had just committed and said, to save your soul, we need to save this child, and you need to raise him as his own, as your own. And karma eventually caught up to him, which you could see also as divine intervention, that the very person he committed his worst atrocities to would be his downfall. Another one that's kind of controversial is the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon, the musical by Trey Parker, who also made South Park, though does take a lot of jabs at Mormonism and religion in general. They do kind of come around to the fact that, hey, religion is very empowering for a lot of people. Whether it makes sense to us or not, it's a good thing for a lot of people, and we can respect that.
Which was the point of the South Park episode.
The South Park episode is a whole other thing. That just made fun of Mormonism. But they did, also in the episode, they talked about how the religion just seemed nonsensical in its lore. But they also put out that hey, the Mormon kid in that episode was happy. He's like, I don't care if you think my religion is dumb or anything like that. I love my happy family. I like the religion we take part in, and you can screw off. It's working for us. And that you had to respect him for that at the end.
So there was a balanced view.
Yeah, it's a very balanced view, and I feel like you'll find that a lot with better writers. There's just sometimes bad writers who are like, you know what we can do to bring this Karen up to the next level is saying she's using the Bible to justify her actions. A lot of people will automatically go to that because it's easy and it's something a lot of people believe. But there are people that put in more effort to give a more measured view, because there's just good and bad in every group that you'll find. But it comes back to my thing that I always keep saying, that you can never generalize people.
And
Right,
more to your point, Heather, the people in real life that act like that don't freaking help.
They do not. They do not.
So DJ, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add in?
I mean, I can get where the thought is coming from, but I don't know.
I don't really see this type of the type of Flanderization, pun intended, happening to other religions as much. Like usually when we get Buddhists in shows, they're very, very peaceful. Even the parodies of Buddhism that we get, is usually about, oh, let's, how far can we push the Buddhist until he breaks his pacifism because he's just so irritated, or something like that, or maybe they'll make some jokes about some reincarnation. When you get Christians in cartoons and TV shows and movies, and the Christianity is the forefront of their character, 9 out of 10 times it's just this character being absolutely unbearable.
I would say that that's a con to something great that Christianity has going on that a lot of religions do not. Like, how many temples to Buddhism or any Hindu religions can you name? I think I know of one in our town, but there's a million different Christian churches spread out around our country. It's just that Christianity has just been so widespread that everybody knows it, and you can make more jabs at something and people it's easier to make fun of Christians because they're such a big group that they're easy to make fun of because there's more things about them. What else do we know about Buddhists other than they're supposed to be peaceful, they're vegetarians? Offhand, I don't know that much. I don't know a lot about I don't know a lot about Buddhists. I don't know a lot about Muslims. I don't know. I hardly know. Like, there's a lot of religions out there, and we hardly know anything about a lot of them because of, like, European colonization and missionary outreach. Christianity is just so widespread. We know more about it, and it's easier to write jokes about things that we know. So it's kind of just a con of Christianity being so widely spread and accepted, is that people are going to make fun of it a lot more than other things because, like earlier what Shady said, a quarter of the world is Christian.
Indeed, and I can understand that, but also there seems to be a cultural acceptance, a general cultural acceptance, probably because of the, really cynical atheists that you mentioned in Hollywood, is that for some reason it's acceptable to make fun of Christians and have these flanderizations of Christianity in media. But if I were to make jokes of the same caliber about literally any other religion, I would be a horrible person and my show would get pulled immediately.
Absolutely.
my
And you know
channel.
why that is? You know why that is because everybody knows a Christian, and me not being a religious person can see a Christian stereotype and be like, yeah, but that's not all of them though. How many people do you know that know a Muslim? As soon as they see a Muslim stereotype, that's all they know about them. That is all that they understand. It's like the only representation of Muslims was like the one caricature they saw on Family Guy or something. And that's kind of how I was for a while with Mormons. The only thing I knew about the Mormon religion was that one South Park episode where they went into Mormonism. And I actually met some Mormons later, kind of so, but it's a little more measured when you meet them in person. Like, a lot of my family converted to Mormonism when I was in high school. I didn't really like. I wasn't bought into the religion, and I decided from then I didn't want to go along with Catholic stuff either because I was never bought into that either. So I'm kind of just what I am now. But it's just, yeah, like, you don't want people's first introduction to a culture to be a stereotype that they might also see the religion and culture themselves might see as harmful. People don't worry about that with Christians because everyone knows a Christian. Almost everyone is born with either Christian neighbors or they're born into like a somewhat Christian family at the very least. They have so many different representations of Christians throughout their life that people like I bet it sucks for you, but like it's not a big deal to make fun of Christians because there's just so many of them and some of them don't care. Like, a lot of them don't care, at least enough to do anything. And the ones that do complain are normally seen as those Karens who are just complaining about anything. So it kind of sucks, but I think I can understand why it happens.
Well, and note it's built into the religion itself when Jesus claimed, "The world hated me, therefore it'll hate you also." Christians are coming with an expectation that this truth is going to divide families, these truths are going to divide relationships. So if we look at, for example, the consequence of making fun of Christianity, the absolute worst case scenario is a bunch of Karens who have to be reminded about what their religion actually claims. The absolute worst case scenario for a Muslim is the studio blowing up and mobs basically worldwide burning down churches in the name of Western values because they associate us entirely with Christianity. You look at the Charlie Hebdo cartoons and the atheists who paradise Islam, and they ended up getting killed. Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses, he just survived another assassination attempt when the Shahs of Iran put out a fatwa, a assassination order against him. On and on it goes. You look at Buddhism. The absolute worst case scenario is they don't take their terms of karma long term seriously enough and commit terrorist acts against Christians or Muslims for offsetting karma by doing good for them when this lifetime is meant to be worked out in a negative sense because of things done in their past lives. On and on it goes. And again, like I said, I don't assume that everyone's going to take the time to read through these things, but what is the ultimate consequence for Christians? An expectation that they need to take their religion more seriously. What's the expectation for everyone else? Life or death. That's why I think it's a more open target, because they know there's not going to be consequences, at least not physical ones.
Interesting. What do you guys think about that?
Honestly, I hadn't heard of any of that, so I wouldn't know anything about it. I will say it wouldn't surprise me if someone made like a Christian person made a violent attack because someone insulted them so much, and I don't think that's on the religion. People will attack you with violence for the dumbest of reasons. You hear about all the death threats shippers send out? Who remembers that?
Well, shippers are by far the worst religion. Like, even worse than Muslims.
Don't say that.
Oh, I'm saying it.
I'll say it.
Welcome to the
Please.
free speech show.
I think politics might still be a worse religion than shipping.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
God, they're close. They certainly can be. Here's the thing, though. I've met reasonable politicians, and I've met reasonable people who who follow politics on all sides. Well, less and less lately on the left, but that's beside the point. I have not met a reasonable shipper. They don't exist.
I guess in what franchise, but we'll get to that more on another topic.
So, that is certainly something that, and yeah, what he's saying is true, Heather. That it's been all over the news, whenever it happens. But yeah, if you make fun of Muslims, you're probably gonna get killed. They will
Well,
kill
go
you.
to jihadwatch.org. It's a daily occurrence in Europe and India where people are being killed just for the accusation of desecrating the Quran. People burn the Bible every day and no one cares. Why? Because it's in the religion that they could be held accountable to it and saying you're not supposed to be violent. That vengeance is ultimately going to come from God in the end, not in this life. Whereas you read the Quran, you have direct calls for violence if they insult Muhammad or the Quran. You go to the Bhagavad Gita and you don't have any concept of morality to begin with. So whatever people do is just them obeying the whims of their nature. You look at, well, on and on it goes, but you go to atheism, it depends on the individual. They can't be held accountable to anything. But if you call out a Christian and saying you aren't supposed to be violent, you aren't supposed to be reactive, they can say, you're right, because it's built into the belief system.
So ultimately, it's okay to tackle Christians because A, a lot of the people producing the media hate Christians to begin with, and B, Christians are the less likely to actually do anything about it.
Yeah, the bully's going to target the guy who's least likely to punch back.
And yeah, that's how we get these. That's how we get these averages, and just in general, with Japan, and Japan is funny in a way with their representations of Christianity, because they'll try to be endearing occasionally, but Japan's general understanding of Christianity is so far off the mark that it's actually hilarious, and then it ends up being this weird amalgamation of um, concepts and characters from the Bible, but diluted by their Shintoism. Or you get things like somebody had mentioned in the chat, the anime where Jesus is a roommate with Buddha.
Yeah, but
Sounds
that's in the context
hilarious.
of parody.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've
again,
seen a clip of that show. It actually is kind of funny where they're in a sauna and the way Jesus is describing his past, they think he's from the Yakuza.
Oh my god, I gotta see that. Also, can I ask you guys a question about how do you guys feel about how religion is used in like vampire hunting anime or shows and stuff like that, like the cross being used against vampires and like never showed you this movie called Van Helsing, but his thing is he worked for like the Vatican and he had a steel crucifix. How do you guys feel like that? You're like, oh man, that's so badass.
Is that
Christianity
the one
beats
where he turns into a
vampires.
werewolf?
Yeah! What don't you
My
gave
parents
away
love
the
that
ending.
movie.
Spoiler. No,
I love that
actually,
movie.
read the original Dracula if you want to know why. If you go
Oh,
to the
I read that
historical,
one.
yeah, it was meant to be a critique against basically unchecked immigration, and the vampire was supposed to be an illustration of you welcoming in your own demise. That's why he always brought his home soil with him to walk on, and he couldn't enter in unless invited and so forth. But he would specifically go after women and suck the life from them and all that stuff. You can take or pick what you want about the political commentary, but that's where the mythos came from. And ironically enough, what was going to be the picture that would preserve Western civilization, it was the cross, it was the church, and that's why vampires hated those things. They also hated garlic because, oddly enough, Italian, Rome, you get the idea.
That's hilarious to think about. I love that.
But
But
it
yeah. So generally, how do you guys feel about like Christianity? And like someone brought up, hey, the anime Helsing and Helsing Ultimate, like the church is a factor in that. Despite the fact that like the main characters are vampires, which are ungodly creatures, one of the most badass guys in that series is just a human dude, but he like squares up with immortal vampires because he's just like a really awesome priest who like,
and
oh
Knives for
god,
Days.
not yeah. He's just nice for days. He freaking squares up to an immortal vampire who has so much experience and actual magical power on his side, and he's just like this Irish badass.
Yeah, the difference, and again, I can only speak for myself because I've taken the time to read the background behind these things, but it's no more a caricature or a picture of art than, for example, looking at Dark Souls and seeing the medieval references and all of that. If I understand that they're just picking Christian themes because they look cool, they might drive home the narrative of this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. Or, for example, Berserk, where the author and writer deliberately used biblical iconography, pictures of light, as the evil, and pictures of dark and evil as the good, in order to make a point of contrast that good and evil are found in your character, not in your appearance. That's a more biblical theme than I would say for other things. Maybe even Bible Man, for corn's sake. But if on the other hand we're going to ask the question, Helsing Ultimate, that was just art. And the fact that the church was involved, I think, was more an association with the vampiric lore than a jab at the Catholic Church in particular. And I'm a Protestant, I'm the last person to defend that. What's also interesting is what I actually found disrespectful was especially the series finale of Helsing Abridged Ultimate, because it wasn't the pictures that they were promoting, it was the message that actually ended up making most of their jokes take a back seat so they could let off some steam. And that, I think, was more malicious. But the idea behind art, and that's my point, is it's just a picture meant to be understood. These are the good guys, yet they're doing bad things. And I think that's a more sound biblical message, just like Jesus confronting the Pharisees and saying, you guys call yourselves these religious scholars, but you won't even lift a finger to the weightier matters of the law. That's more biblical than most people would give it credit for.
Interesting. What do we think about characters that might be religious in nature? And like I saw somebody mention Ghost Rider in the chat,
Yeah.
who and Ghost Rider goes back and forth from being demonic or satanic in origin to angelic
Fallen
in his
angel.
powers. Yeah. So what do we think
Captured
about
angel,
that?
I think.
Well, I've only read a few versions, and there's like 50. Are they talking about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. one, the Nick Cage one, the comic one, the newest one? Which one?
Dude, he showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I knew I should have finished
Yeah, that
watching
was one season.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
okay.
You can watch
that's
the seasons out of order anyway. None of them matter
Sign of good
Yay!
writing.
to each other. They don't matter because every season's a reboot.
Well, that just sounds
All
like it
Marvel's a
sucks.
disaster right now.
Well, that's what happens when you have a TV industry that's not allowed to use anything from the movies. They just have to adhere to what the movies say. That's what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had to deal with. Because they still had to deal with all the stuff happening in the Marvel movies, but they couldn't touch any of the characters. So blame Kevin Feige.
They got Lady Sif at one point.
So, well, I guess Shady, just sort of pick one there and pick your favorite and least favorite.
Well, the least favorite, I think, would probably be the Nick Cage one because it just ultimately accomplished nothing. Spirit of Vengeance had some good nods here and there, but it just made Satan out to be this, bizarre political manipulator as opposed to what Christianity would actually make him out to be. And the nature of a fallen angel being redeemed is actually antithetical to the Bible. You can read Hebrews chapter 1. But if, on the other hand, we look at a positive example, I really like the original comic book version because the only thing, and it was like a borderline-esque Nightcrawler moment. If the only thing that would release his soul wasn't him, figuring out how many deals he has to do for the devil, but to turn himself over to the only power greater than the devil, or Mephisto, as he was called in that. He literally gets saved by the end of the series. The new one is, Cosmic Ghost Rider and all these woke things that just kind of make the spiritual realm out to be about as meaningful as any of the Thor movies. But I did like the original, and I thought the Nick Cage one. Everyone loves Nick Cage, but as far as biblical substance is concerned, I wouldn't consider it a biblical figure.
Alrighty then.
You know what's one I just thought of? Constantine. Do you remember Constantine? Because his whole thing is that he was kind of trying to buy his way into heaven by fighting the forces of, hell. And the movie, I remember the movie and it was really good. You guys familiar with that one?
With Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
I never saw the Keanu Reeves. I saw a bit of the TV show that they did after they've kind of rebranded him with the newer comics. From my understanding is he doesn't deal a whole lot with the heaven side, but he's mostly an agent of chaos trying to screw around the demons of hell that screwed him over.
It's Dante from Devil May Cry.
Dante from Devil May Cry.
Kind of. It's also it also delves a lot into how hell is separated by 3 kings or whatever. But that's just DC lore in general. You see a lot of that in the Sandman.
Yeah, which is taken from Kabbalic mysticism, not the Bible. And that's, again, allowed. It's art, but I wouldn't say it's biblical. Or a misrepresentation of anything biblical.
Mm-hmm.
How many iterations? Random question. I'll save this one for the end, actually. Because it's irrelevant, but I'm curious.
What do we think about, goodness, I was just, the video game Dante's Inferno?
The bad ripoff of God of War, but Catholic.
Yeah, pretty much.
I know it caused a stir with its marketing campaign, didn't it?
Yeah, well, and you have your bare bones enemies being, unbaptized infants. I think people have a right to be upset. But
yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah, but because it was no more a representation of Catholicism, I won't even call it Christian, than God of War was of Greek paganism. They used the names, but that's about it.
Yeah, from what I heard, it did play very similarly, but the original Inferno story,
The Divine
was
Comedy, it was 3 books.
Yeah,
the Inferno was one of them.
Right, the middle one specifically, but in the Inferno, as Dante is being toured through hell, Limbo was the first sort of section before they actually got into hell proper, and that's where you found all the unbaptized babies, because they weren't baptized, so they couldn't get into heaven, but infant mortality was very high at the during the Renaissance, so that's where that idea sort of came from, and then they put it into the freaking game as something that'll mob you.
Question, guys. Dante's Inferno, that was just a story someone wrote with Christian themes, or is it adapted into the Bible? I can't remember.
It's not adapted into the Bible. It was just a, Italian fan fiction that was meant to reflect on things, because the Paradise Lost poem also had gotten popular. He thought that giving a cultural rendition of the afterlife would be appropriate. The problem is he took more from Greek paganism than he did from actual Christianity. The funny thing is, and I'll just be real brief about this, Christianity in all the world religions talks the least about heaven. The only thing we know is it's with Jesus. And frankly, that's enough.
And so Heather, he mentioned Paradise Lost, and that was another extracurricular, it's a non-canon.
I'm actually familiar with Paradise Lost. I was actually funny because I was watching a video from Cartoon Universe. Because you know how they talk about Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss. They're delving into a little bit about Christian themes in it, because really, small tangent, Hell of a Boss really hasn't gotten into anything Christian. It's just all about hell. There's nothing about it. I'm sure Hazbin Hotel will actually do something with it, but Hell of a Boss, as far as Christianity goes, no comment whatsoever. But
I
Cartoon
disagree.
Universe recently had a video called "Lucifer is the Hero." Well, that was the thumbnail. It's like, is Lucifer the good guy? Why the modern audiences think the devil is is uh is the hero. And he talked a little bit about Paradise Lost and where like it began, like Lucifer being romanticized as kind of a underdog or an antihero or something like that.
No, that's Leviathan. The purpose of Paradise Lost is to describe the mindset of a rebellious soul. And I thought it was a very interesting cultural commentary on why hell is what it is. But I think they missed a couple steps there. If they were going to say that Paradise Lost makes Lucifer out to be a empathetic figure, the idea was that God made man to be ultimately higher than the angels, and because Lucifer was already such a glorious being, he didn't want to subject himself to something lower than himself and thought he could do things better. None of this is in the Bible, but the idea was that that was the root of where his pride was. And good writing's gonna good write. It's an interesting study on the nature of pride and rebellion, but it doesn't set a positive note for them in the end. A direct quote from the book is that I carry hell wherever I am because I just am loath at all the good things that come from God. So,
That's certainly something that we could think about as well. Is to what degree is Christianity represented in Vivzipop's series of Has-Been and Helluva? Because for the pilot for Has-Been, all we've got is, hey, the angels are going to come kill us every year, so they're probably going to be
Well,
treated villainously.
is
And
it
then in
annual?
Hell of a Boss, we had that one episode with the cherubs, and that wasn't at all accurate. But what were you saying,
Oh
DJ?
yeah, I guess that was the one time it happened.
I don't. Did they say that was an annual thing? I thought that was a like anytime it gets overfilled.
No. Yeah, it was an annual thing because if you saw in the pilot, there was a clock that said, "Hey, 365 days until the next purge," because like it had just happened. So yeah, it's something that happens on the regular every year.
Though to
so
some
where do they
extent,
go?
to some extent, it would make sense that hell would see angels in heaven as the enemy, because like they're the opposites of them. Why would they ever see them as anything else but?
Well, that's more
We might
inspiration from the Screw Tape letters.
we might get like I totally could see it go the easy way of being like, oh, they're actually all hypocrites and heaven is for the hoity-toity and people who bought their way in. Or it could go a different route, which, the writing on Hell of a Boss is pretty good, so I feel like they could pull this off. Is seeing it as like, hey, heaven might also be a mixed bag. Where was I going with this? I'm just saying that we might see a mixed perspective because uh, honestly, Charlie herself is sort of a half angel. Lucifer himself is a fallen angel. I'm not sure exactly what the story is with the mom. She has horns, but she's Lilith, and in I believe it was the Jewish religion, she was
Yeah.
the first wife of Adam, made equal to him.
Not the Jewish religion. It's also from Kabbalic mysticism. We gonna keep this PG, or do you just not want to get into it?
Go for it.
Uh,
All right.
Go for
Here's
broke.
the
We don't
R-rated
care here.
version. There was a rabbinic commentary on basically the rebellion of man in Genesis chapter 3, and he basically made up wholesale an example of rebellious women where Adam had a previous wife named Lilith who refused to let Adam be on top, to phrase it modestly, and so God cursed her and made her the mother of all demons. I don't know if the rabbi was having trouble at home or what, but that was where that came from.
It has no basis anywhere.
No. But if they're going to be consistent with the lore, then Lilith would have to be a half human, half demon.
Oh, so like Charlie is like God, that's like three things. Maybe half angel, then a quarter human, a quarter demon.
We'll figure out Mendelian genetics later.
So
Angels
let's
neither
talk.
marry nor given in marriage. How about that?
Let's talk for a little bit about how Christians represent themselves in their own media, because we alluded to that at the beginning. We got things like VeggieTales and Bible Man. Freaking Saber Sparks got, every other one of his videos is about some Christian media that went horribly, horribly wrong. One of his biggest YouTube fights.
Horribly horny.
Yeah, that too. One of his biggest YouTube fights was with the guy who made that show that had the Glib Glab Glob Glab or something like that. That was supposed to be a Christian show too.
Yeah, that dude.
What the frick was up with that? Yeah, so
someone who probably couldn't take criticism.
So what do we think about the way Christians represent ourselves?
Well, that was my point, is I think the best example to Christian representation is one through contrast, that if you see this isn't Jesus, then you have some growing up to do, which every Christian has to tell themselves every single day. If on the other hand you'd say, I've arrived, I'm already obtained, you're in direct contradiction to Philippians 3. So the idea of basically how Christians mess up, that's the premise of why we become Christian. We need Jesus. Without a Savior, we, of course, need saving, but because of the Savior, we have hope. Not that we've achieved it. Our goal is to press towards Christ. We want to be more like Him. And the ultimate hope of Christianity, 1 John chapter 3, 1-3, is to be like Him. And that's the work that He promised He'd complete in the hearts of everyone who trusts in Him through His Spirit. So the idea of, I guess, the representation being, unfair, unbalanced, sometimes exasperated or enforced to the degree where it just becomes cringy Karenism in reverse, I think that Christians can redeem it into an opportunity to say, I know some people like that, and I've been like that sometimes. We confess our sins daily and pray for each other daily because we know we have it. The moment you say you stopped having it's the moment you're back to square one. See season 2 of My Little Pony, right? You forget love, you forget the first lesson.
So, for those who don't have the Bible memorized, what is Philippians 3?
Philippians 3 is Paul basically going through all his credentials as a rabbi, someone who had memorized the entire Old Testament, someone who had kept every single Jewish law, and yet he says, I count it as garbage compared to Christ. Not that I've already attained, I'm already perfected, but I press towards the goal, the upward call in Christ Jesus. That's the idea. You have everything going for you spiritually, socially, intellectually. You aren't Jesus, and that's the point.
Yep. And I see, Eldritch Dragoon in the chat mentioning Prince of Egypt, and that's a really good example too of and there's been a few movies about Exodus, and for some reason Exodus seems to produce the best movies. I don't know what it is. Exodus and Christmas
seem to
story. Yeah, seem to produce the best movies, but outside of that, by and large, Christian media is kind of cringy. Why do we think that is?
Well, y'all are just corny.
I think my take on it is that it usually tries to be Christian first, entertainment second.
Exactly.
As bad as, almost sacrilegious as that sounds, when you're making entertainment, you have to focus on the entertainment part of it. That's what worked so well for VeggieTales. Because sure, it is telling the stories of God, but at first, it's comedic. It has great timing, it has great visuals, it knows when to be a little hyperbolic. It's still, in essence, the stories from the Bible when they want to tell those ones, but also knows it can have funny characters with funny moments and songs that will get stuck in your head for the next 20 years of your life.
My favorite VeggieTales episode was the one about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, jeez.
What's that one?
I don't know.
I don't think that one's real.
No, they did. VeggieTales, and that's another thing.
I don't think that was enough PG.
Yeah, that's another thing about Christian media is what you're saying is true. I think, and to add on to what you're saying there, DJ, I think the best way, because a lot of the time they're trying to make it for other Christians, so it's like they're preaching to the choir. But if you're trying to minister to people through your artistic medium, the best way to do that would be to have good characters, tell good stories, and to have ultimately your Christian themes or Christ himself be the positive focus and the end point of the story. And if you tell a compelling story, then the audience, say you're pandering to people that for what like that they're just not familiar with Christianity somehow, right? And you tell this really good story, and now they're interested in Christianity. And Heather and I have sort of talked about this type of thing with, like, say, Hamilton. And Hamilton sucked historically, but it ran the very real possibility that it got somebody out there interested into learning the real history, just by being as entertaining as it was. This is my theory. Separate from all that, here's my theory of why a lot of Christian media on average is kind of bad. Christians are weak by and large. We get a lot of people saying the good book, right? And I'm gonna say this in my own observations of Christianity, is there are a lot of Christians out there who have never read the Bible, and if you never read the Bible, you might think it's a good book, and not one of the most metal, gruesome series of stories out there depicting the absolute worst aspects of human nature and how, we sort of cause our own downfalls, and how to and how to avoid those things. Shoot,
They might call
Shady,
it one book.
yeah, Shady, help me out here. Who's the dude that was so fat that when we ran him through with a sword, it got down to the hilt and we still didn't hit any organs?
Elgon.
Yeah. That kind of thing. Sodom and Gomorrah, for if y'all don't know, that place was, those two cities were so bad that they were smited with fire and brimstone. And
Which we can verify archaeologically.
exactly. So, Dirty Harry Potter saying the Bible is actually 2 books. Yes and no. But
no,
anyway,
it's 66 books.
Christians are not good. Like, because Christians try to isolate themselves from evil, the result of that is that they never really learn how to confront the ugly side of things, and they end up being weak. And if you really get biblical with your themes, you're gonna put off a lot of Christians. I've known a lot of them. They're very sheltered people, and they really are not good at handling accurate depictions of their own book. Very, very squeamish, very sheltered, by and large on average. And this is fairly true across all denominations, including non-denominational. At least that's been my observations. Feel free to, I don't know, does anybody have anything to add or take away from what I've just said?
Well, I think there's wisdom in not being, as would scripture say, simple concerning things of evil, but wise concerning things that are good. You don't have to take crystal meth to be able to effectively conclude that it is in fact a bad thing and just kind of isolate yourself from that world. It's an exaggerated example, but I think a valid one. But if on the other hand, like my arguments on my earlier YouTube videos, and I'll be getting back to them here soon in a moment, but the idea of something being truly Christian means it's Christ-like. And Christ, the one who created this universe, who made it functional, that made it beautiful, that made it just everything that we see as the inspiration for art and majesty. There's a reason why the Renaissance happened in medieval Europe, not in Islamic countries, not in Buddhist countries. So the idea of someone being Christian, call us cringe if you want. I would consider Five Nights at Freddy's more Christian than Bible Man, because he, as a good game programmer, took something simple, the unnerving nature of animatronics at Chuck E. Cheese, and made a good horror game off of it. If people are going to call something Christian, it's not because they have a Bible stamped on the front, it's because it's effective communication. And I think that's a valid point.
You know, I found Brawny's take of it, like that Christians are weak, to be an interesting one, because I hadn't heard that yet. On my end, I feel like it's because they go into art not to make art. I just think anything you go into with an agenda in mind is just not going to come out as good as you think it is. It's great to be inspired by your religion to create something, but you shouldn't be in to create something just because you want to spread a certain narrative, you know?
That was DJ's point.
Yeah, so more or less, I concur. Good job, DJ. Hoof bump.
Well, just going back to it, is that the best way I think to give good representation that way is not only just to be entertaining, but the best way to do it is to have the values of Christianity throughout your entertainment. Because, like, I mean, Shady found plenty in My Little Pony alone, and that's not necessarily I wouldn't say that's a Christian show to most people. But it's got great values, it's got great lessons, it's entertaining characters first and foremost with fun stories.
Well, the
That's
fun
how
thing
you-
about that is the things that are good and the things that fall in line with Christian values are pretty much the same thing. And I said this a couple of weeks ago on the debate is part of the reason I am Christian is because I have observed that things that are true in nature are also reflective of what is written in the Bible. So yeah, My Little Pony ends up being one of the most Christian shows out there.
It's
Yeah,
like
but most
that.
people aren't going to call it that. They're just going to see
I
it's a
will.
fun show, and they'll take the values. Hopefully, they'll take the values that they learn and continue onward. Maybe eventually they'll find the Lord or whatever religion they end up in. But the values still pass on, even if not necessarily the religion itself was front and center. And sometimes
That
I
is
think that's
true.
enough.
It certainly can be. And I know I've helped a few people with my videos like Moral of the Story, and every single one of those, and I've been very open about this, or has been written with a Christian lens. But I recognize that if I'm like too overtly Christian about it, that people are going to get stuck on the message, or going to get stuck on like the Christian aspect, and if they're of a different religion or atheistic themselves or have had bad experiences with Christianity, you're going to lose the whole message. So I try to speak to people in a language that they understand, but when asked or in situations like this where I have a chance to be open about it, I'm going to be open about it. The moral of the story is a Christian series. And then Shady has taken it a lot more literally when he was doing straight up Bible studies themed around the episodes themselves.
Now that is in essence attempting to lead people to Christianity rather than force them, which I feel like a lot of Christian media tries to do, is essentially try to force the faith on others when you should be leading them to it. It's their choice in the end. They have to come to it
Yeah.
themselves.
Indeed.
As opposed to misrepresenting Christianity to force people away from it.
Yeah, I think everybody sucks when it comes to Christian media. Like we got a long way to go as a culture before we find that balance. But as long as it's okay to just cynically mock Christians, then I don't think that's going to happen. It's almost rewarded to mock Christians. I sort of wish that the culture was more balanced in that if you were to mock Christians, you would get the same sort of backlash and treatment as if you mocked any other religion, and at which point we would probably find a lot more good representation because it would be encouraged rather than having mocking of Christianity being encouraged. But that's I don't that's may or may not be a different story. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't think that the promotion of Christianity, or at least the permission of it, should be through fear. I think people should want to see and have access to Christian themes and values just as much as anything else and be able to sort out the difference themselves. But when it comes to the main area of concern, that'll never be the case, because if Christianity is true, the claims of Jesus are correct, he said from the get-go, I will be hated. my followers will be hated because I was hated. And if that's in fact the case, well, the nature of the world we see today is one more proof of it. But the idea of someone objectively saying, no, there is a God, there is a truth, and I'm it, that's going to divide people. And whether or not they do that with them is between him and them. But if we want society to altruistically come to it, there's a reason it's called dominion theology. The world will get better and better until the second coming of Christ. Died away after World War II. They realized this world ain't getting better, and it's going to continue to get that way.
Well, I think there was a misunderstanding of what I said in terms of that. I'm just saying it's encouraged to belittle Christians in the media. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you'd need to make people afraid of it, but when we make fun of other religions in media, there's the subset of people saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. If Christians got a better treatment just culturally, then we would probably see better representations. But like you're saying, Shady, yeah, I don't think that can or should be done forcefully, and that's not what I was saying. And I know that what Shady is saying about that it probably by nature cannot be done, then it is also true. I was just speaking wishfully. That I wish things were a little bit more balanced.
Don't we all?
Indeed. Alrighty then. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we get into audience participation?
Oh, so can I ask that one question I had? It might be a divisive question amongst you guys. Who is your favorite representation of the devil in media? I like him from Powerpuff Girls.
That's a good question.
He's very wild.
Mm,
The voice is iconic.
probably the one from Devil is a Part-Timer.
Oh, I remember hearing about that one.
He's just such an idiot. And he gives in so quickly to becoming a human to the point where his goal is now to become become a manager of the McDonald's.
But he could have all the McChickens he wants.
You know that's not how managerial positions work in those places.
Still gotta pay
It could be. He's the devil.
You'll probably laugh at this. Cozy Glow.
Cozy Glow?
I did.
Probably the best representation of the picture we get of what Lucifer actually is. Perfect in wisdom, perfect in beauty. Looks like a good guy, but what's actually the issue is the heart.
I would have said that, but about Chrysalis. Cozy Glow is just a sociopath.
Chrysalis is a succubus.
Read Isaiah 14.
Okay, tell me Isaiah 4. I don't have the Bible memorized, my man. I wish I did, but I'm not there yet. What's Isaiah 14?
It's in its original historical context a contrast between the king of Tyre and basically the guy who made the first mistake, the actual devil. It's also interestingly contrasted in Ezekiel 28, but let me just read the passage. Verse 12 says, "Oh, if you have fallen from heaven, morning star," that's Lucifer, "son of the dawn, you have been cast to the earth where you once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens, raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned in the mountain of the assembly, the uppermost heights of Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. Those who see you stare at you, they ponder your fate. Is this the man who shook the earth, make the kingdoms tremble? The man who made the world a wilderness, who overthrew its cities, would not let his captives go home?" And then it goes on to note that everything that he has, both the king of Tyre and Lucifer himself, will be destroyed. So it's the boast, the picture, the image of someone who's going to make themselves out to be the figure of ultimate power because they alone are worthy of it and will manipulate anything to accomplish that.
That is
Ezekiel-
eerily similar to the monologue Cozy Glow went on at the end of season 8.
Exactly. And you can listen to my study on that. I said, wow. The whole study. Wow.
I still would have said Chrysalis had a similar sort of goal and even methodology, especially with the shape-shifting.
Yeah,
But
the devil himself transforms himself into an angel of light. That's first or 2 Corinthians 12. But as far as the nature, the representation of Satan, not just looking like a good guy, but that the heart's the actual issue.
I guess I was onto something a little bit better that one time we had than I thought I was. That one time we had a debate on which was the best villain, and I tried to argue for Cozy Glow.
It did not go well.
Nah, y'all kicked my butt that night. It was
I know, it was great.
yeah. Alrighty then, so we'll get into audience participation now. I got a few of them here, and hopefully you guys saw some as well. We got Harriman says, there are notable exceptions like Babylon 5, which treated Christianity very well alongside a number of other religions. So I don't know anything about Babylon 5. Can somebody educate me?
Oh, we should get the Raptor's Talon in here. He knows a lot about Babylon 5, remember?
I guess so.
I've never seen it. I've been hearing more about that bit, but I've never known anything about Babylon's 5.
Quick, Talon, if you're here, tip us some money and tell us what you think.
Oh my god. So forward. Paladin Pony T says, which denominations do you think are shown the most and are usually shown in a bad light? So,
Catholic.
Catholics are technically a denomination, I guess. They're would we say they're the first denomination or I don't know. Do you think they're a denomination?
No, the Coptic Church was way earlier than them, but the idea, and the Catholic Church has its own denominations as well, but in their terms, they would be this unified separate, and the idea, the main criticism of Christianity is oftentimes in, like Jesus said, making as law the traditions of men. So that's generally what gets the most flack, and I think to a point it's warranted. That's why I took the positive position.
And if it's not Catholicism, it's definitely the Baptists. And whenever you see Baptists in media, it's most likely going to be a Southern dude who's, stealing money from the church or just incredibly bigoted.
Yeah.
Just irrationally hateful of everyone that's not him. And to a degree, the stereotype is correct in the sense that the South has a lot of Baptists for some reason. I don't know why.
But that Southern culture or is that Christian culture?
That's the question. It's certainly not Christian culture because that type of mentality and that type of behavior is certainly not what Christ teaches. But in the South, there is a disproportionate amount of Baptists. Of that much, I can be certain. Funnily enough, I grew up in the North, and my father was a Baptist, and he converted to Catholicism when he married my mother. Let's see here. Thomas Proctor says Muslims would beg to differ that they get off easy. Liberal people hold back, but others like center or right people make fun of Muslims more often. I guess
I'm of that category.
I don't see it that much, especially not in like mainstream media or movies. Like, if you're just talking with somebody and they're center or right, they'll probably make a lot of jokes about Muslims and the things they've seen Muslims do, but you're never going to see it in TV.
Probably see it the most from other Muslims. They have a great sense of humor. Just ask my friend Tala.
I don't know about your friend Tala. You want to fill me in?
Some of the best Muslim jokes. In fact, 3 of the jokes I make on Time in the Shade came from him.
Oh, geez.
No,
Let's see here. Trent on Twitter says, from what I've seen, Jehovah's Witnesses have the worst reputations, and it shows. I don't have a high opinion of Jehovah's Witnesses as
They are Aryan cultists.
Yeah, as a denomination, they're a lot of the way they're run is very anti-Christian.
And a lot of their teachings, and a lot of their methods, and a lot of their eschatology, and a lot of their...
Now, here's the thing, and I've got beef with Joseph Smith, but I have a lot of Mormon friends. And some of them I would definitely say are better people than me. So that, like, I've never been able to be friends with a Jehovah's Witness. They just straight up don't allow you to be friends with people that are not Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yep, disfellowshipped.
Exactly.
Isn't that more cultish then?
What was
Say
that,
that
DJ?
again.
Isn't that more cultish?
Yeah, it's an Aryan cult. It's based off of the teachings of Arius of Alexandria.
Do they at
Founded
least
by
not knock
Russell.
on people's doors at 5 a.m. on a weekend?
Yep.
Oh my God, you've had that
That's the
happen?
only way to get out of hell.
Actually did back at my parents' house. It was like, what, 7 in the morning on a Saturday? They're just there in full suit and tie, and it's like, I'm there groggy, dressed in a shirt only, and some pants, and like, dude, seriously? I thought this was fake. Leave.
Call me next time. I'll make them start crying, and then you'll get a red X on your house as an active opposer.
The I've had Mormons come up to my door, but I grew up in Joseph Smith's hometown, so I grew up in the Mormon Mecca, basically.
There was some Mormons that were traveling to someone else's house in the neighborhood, and I tied them down for 3 hours.
Oh my God, you would.
My experience with Mormons, like I said, like half my family converted over to that, so there were a lot of missionaries around, and they did kind of hassle me a little bit to join, but my brother-in-law broke it down. He's like, just tell them directly, no, you're trying to be polite about it, but as soon as you're firm and tell them, hey, no, I'm not interested, they're gonna back off, and they did.
Indeed. Let's see here. What else did I have? Eldritch Dragoon said Saint Young Men. Does anybody know about that one?
No.
Nope.
Alrighty then. Harriman says Trigun actually treats Christianity very well.
Trigun is not Christian, it's Mormon.
Oh, Saint Young Men is the name of the anime where Jesus and Buddha are friends.
Oh, okay.
Are living as roommates in an apartment in Tokyo for some reason.
And they were roommates.
Which is parody, and that's fine.
Oh my God, they were roommates.
I mean, the scene where they think he's in the Yakuza is absolutely hilarious. I'll find you that clip, Heather. You have to see it.
Let's see here. Thomas
there's a
Proctor
reason
says
I haven't done a study on Trigun.
There's Thomas Proctor says I like Lucimon from Digimon Frontiers, and somebody else said Steven Universe was Alien Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it to see exactly who said that.
Steven Universe?
Steven Universe is
don't
Alien Jesus, and Rose Quartz was Satan. Oh yeah, Harriman says Rose Quartz makes a good Satan.
It didn't ruin everything.
You know what? Make a video about it. I would love to like just listen to this.
Yeah, I found it. Thomas Proctor. Did you guys ever see Steven Universe and think, so is Steven just Alien Jesus with being both his otherworldly parent and not at the same time with healing power? So he's talking about and then he says Rose Quartz at her worst is more like a Greek god like Aphrodite, flighty, impulsive, and reckless, more than actively evil.
For a space rock, she was bizarrely human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was and then Eldritch Dragoon talks about his experience with Mormons being like Shadiversity, and yeah, that was something I noticed a while ago, is that I watch a lot of Mormon YouTubers, and that have nothing to do necessarily with Mormonism. Like Shadiversity turned out to be Mormon. There's and
Studio
then
C.
there's of course Dr. Wolf. One of the martial artists I watch, Ramsey Dewey, turned out to be Mormons. Just a lot of Mormons on YouTube. Let's see here. Gojillion says, not sure if anyone knew this, but Eiji Tsuburaya, the special effects director for a lot of classic Godzilla films and the creator of the show Ultraman, is religious. Well, that's kind of vague. What kind of religion? Is it
The
Christian?
founder of Pokemon's nominal Christian, but it doesn't mean that it's theological.
Yeah, certainly not with the evolution
Praise
thing.
Arceus.
Well,
uh,
evolution means a bunch of different things. Pokemon evolutions stays within the same species. It'd be structural adaptation.
Harriman says, fun fact: the Passion of the Christ was inaccurate in the beating of Jesus that Jesus took, because people could still look at it. Nobody in that crowd could look at Jesus because he had been beaten so badly. What do we think about that?
Well,
You
Mel
could be a-
Gibson
you
himself
could be-
clarified he dialed down the violence by a lot, because otherwise it would have been NC-17.
I was gonna say you'd be a great debater if you could talk.
I'd be a great anything if I could talk. I have the same problem when I'll be teaching and just stutter horribly, and I'd be, oh, gosh darn it, I thought I got over that.
But yeah, no, there were errors in Passion of the Christ that were theological, but as far as the portrayal historically, it served the point.
Alrighty then. Okay, did you guys see anything in the chat that you wanted to tackle? No? Alrighty then.
personally.
Nothing
Okay.
that stood
Nothing
out.
stuck out to me.
Let's see here. Dirty Harry Potter says, we still love you, Brawny. Thank you very much. Your affection is misplaced. Anyway, let's wrap this up then. So, Heather, did you get the most out of this suggestion?
Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. I like the kind of perspective I got on it. It wasn't like it. A bit of it was like, yeah, we get kind of like the short end of the stick when it comes to representation, but you did like admit to like, yeah, there's good, bad here and there, and got into a little more about other things. So it was pretty cool.
Cool. Give me some closing thoughts, and then, well, I think you just gave me some closing thoughts. But what did you learn tonight? Anything?
I mean, like I don't know if I didn't go through a shift of opinion. Really, it's
Well, you don't need to
probably
go
with some
through a
religious
shift of
stuff.
opinion. Just
I know I don't, but like I can't like narrow down one thing. It was a good discussion, but like I don't know if there was like a singular thing. I got certainly some things to think about, but I really am not there with like a singular thing I could tell you. I could just do my regular Applejack thing of like I think I was right all along. In a way I was, because who's really wrong here?
Taylor Clark says, Brawny, what's your experience with Scientologists? I've never met a Scientologist. All I know about Scientology is that it is a blackmail cult. That's really all I could tell you. DJ, how about you? How about you, DJ? Closing thoughts and one thing you learned.
Well, I'm not sure if I learned anything, but I did appreciate hearing Shady's looks at this kind of idea. It's kind of nice hearing from someone who is actually religious, especially with the groups I hang with usually. You don't see someone so strongly religious these days in the circles I usually hit up. But I would definitely say on closing thoughts is, at least in entertainment, to always make sure the entertainment's first, worry about the message in the afterthoughts.
Alrighty then. Dirty Harry Potter says, hey, Brawny, is Doom a Christian game? And that's something I had thought about a while ago, and it had slipped my mind. The creator of Doom thinks it's a Christian game. Or it was, I think it was one of the programmers, and they went up to him and said, "Oh, how can you make a game so violent?" And he goes, "Oh, it's about slaying demons. I can't think of anything more Christian than that." But that guy's a Mormon, so take it all with a grain of salt. I don't know. What do you think, Shady? Is Doom a Christian game?
If we're gonna go the Mormon route, I could hold his own theology to him, and there would be something ironic about that statement. But I'll just leave that as for another conversation. I think it's hilarious.
You know what my favorite Christian game is, guys? Halo.
Yay!
There is
That's
Halos in it.
for Greek mythology. Helios was the one who had the artistic halo. You won't actually find halos in the Bible.
Yeah,
I'm
but they
pretty
had
sure
everything
Doom
else. They had the Ark, they had the Covenant, they had the Flood, which wiped out all life. What else did they have?
What is his Master Chief's name? Is John?
Yeah, John
John
117.
Whether that has,
there a John
I've never heard
117?
of that. I was gonna say, if that was a religious placement of like just like I know there's religious stuff because of course it's the Covenant, religious genocidal aliens, no duh. But freaking if John's name was a Christian thing, like theme thrown in, wow, that flew over my head. I just thought they kind of just
let's what is John chapter 1 verse 17 or something like that? And
Well, John 1:17 or John 11:7, because both would be significant.
Okay, well let's read both of them and figure out which one is most like Master Chief.
Well, John 1:17 is, "For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." That could be a point of contrast, but I think what it's referring to is John 11:7, where Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." I don't know what that would do, so probably.
Okay, so I don't think that one holds water, but yeah, Heather, if you think about it, the way the plot of Halo and like the origins of Halo have a lot of parallels that I think are too many to be coincidental to the story of Noah's flood.
Well, and have you finished?
though I will say, and I keep trying to get this thought out, if they were going something religious with John's name, man, that flew over my head because I thought John was just a placeholder name they never got rid of because it was just so bland and basic. It's like, it was an honor serving with you, John. I'm like, is this fucking John?
Hey,
Just
that's my
John?
name, Myra.
John? Sorry, Shady, but like, come on, John Doe? Like the most basic ass name you could ever give any guy ever? John? I mean, I'm cool with it now, but I thought it was funny at the time. I was like, man, they didn't put much thought into that. It's like, guys, we gotta reveal something since we didn't show his face. What's his name? John? Go! Release the game!
Well, remember the end of Fallout New Vegas, where the Bible verse, "I saw a river of the water of life flowing freely from the Lamb and from the temple."
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Revelation 22:1, yeah.
Alrighty then.
Does Doom still count as a Christian game when in the most recent one you're killing the angels?
I think that's more of a representation of modern culture and.
Are they fallen angels?
Well, Darksiders is kind of like Berserk. It uses both the light and dark, heaven and hell, just as factions, not as meta ethics.
Cool Vanity 81714 says there are Christian themes in Warhammer 40K. Shady, you're the only one here who know about that.
Oh yeah, they can't seem to get away with it.
Oh, all right. And last but not least, Shady, give us some closing thoughts and maybe one thing you learned tonight.
Well, just to repeat my points, I think that if a Christian's going to look at anything as a learning experience and say, how can this encourage me to be more like Jesus, or what can I find about Jesus in this? That's the whole point of my ministry, and I hope that maybe given a clearer and level-headed perspective on that will make fewer Karens and more Constantine, so to speak. But no, I learned a lot. I think that DJ's point about how art needs to be art is very well founded, and that's what I try to do with my sculptures. I think that Heather's point, just basically finding, or rather stumbling upon odd themes, gives open opportunity even in the oddest of places. You guys both know when you were still dating, I had a study ready on Has Been Hotel, but I don't think I'll release it because of sensitivities, and for good reason. I don't think I can watch a Hell of a Boss without stumbling, but you get the idea. I think if people are willing to just look at what they take in visually and consider it and filter it mentally, if it leaves you with more good than less, then I think you've spent your time well.
Alrighty then. Oh, and what about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, that was fun.
Alrighty then. So we're gonna call it there, guys. Did you all have fun with tonight's conversation?
Yeah, I think it went well.
All right, thanks for the suggestion, Heather, and thanks Shady for coming on, and thanks to everybody who tuned in. I've seen a lot of new names in the chat tonight, and especially some names that I haven't seen in a while. So welcome and welcome back. Hopefully, I've earned your continued viewership. If you'd like to be on the show, we'd love to have you. Support the channel for as little as $1 a month, and you can get on the show, suggest topics, suggest games, and all that fun stuff. We're very grateful to everybody who supports, especially those on the $10 and up tier, such as these three who joined me tonight, Heather, DJ, and Shady. There's also Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Rein-Kun, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Alicia Lynette, Zeta Z, Sniper Niders, Calbeck, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Will Eisen, 7 equals 1 Hard, Dark Malcontent, Executive Producer of Titan Art Studios. Check out the support links and what you can get in return, as well as everybody else's content links in the description. They make some pretty good stuff. And we will see you next week for Friday Night Fights and Brony Debates. But we will see you even sooner than that, because in about a half hour, Heather is going live on her channel. Her link is in the description. Heather, what are we doing tonight?
We're crocheting. Did we ever unknot that freaking yellow freaking thing we call a yarn ball? Oh, no, yeah. Emerald got us a few balls out of that, so we might just go along with that hat I was making.
Alrighty then. And Shady, when's your next video, and you have a radio show too?
Yeah, it's every weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. on A Reason for Hope. My father and I will be answering Bible questions. I'll be on this Tuesday. My father will be on Monday. I take Mondays off. My next Shady Oak Ministries video will be every Monday. Time in the Shade, episode 42, I think.
Alrighty then. Good to know. So everybody go subscribe to these guys, and we'll see you. I expect to see you in Heather Blossom's chat in a half hour. Until then, stay safe. God bless. Say goodnight, everyone.
Good night.